Just to be sure, there's a spoiler. Although Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage gave cameo roles to almost all of Young Sheldon's main characters, Season 2 can now bring back one fan favorite thanks to a clever trick from the spin-off series. Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage's title alone highlights the show's central conundrum. When Young Sheldon ended, Georgie and Mandy were newly married and looking forward to a bright future raising their daughter CeeCee together. In The Big Bang Theory Season 11, Episode 23, an older version of Georgie bitterly referenced his ex-wife in passing. Thus, the job of Young Sheldon's spin-off is to clearly explain what happened to the seemingly stable relationship between the two shows. However, since Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage is a spin-off of Young Sheldon, the show also needs to keep in touch with that earlier hit's main characters. That was a big ask when Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage also needed to establish some new main characters of its own simultaneously, and Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 2 now has to balance the two families that make up the main cast members of both shows. Welcome to Movie Spy. Young Sheldon's George Sr. is more likely to return after Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 1. Georgie and Mary Cooper now co-own a tire store together. In Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 1, the spin-off mostly focused on Georgie's relationship with Mandy and her family, the McAllisters. Mandy's brother Connor soon became the spin-off's breakout star, while her parents, Audrey and Jim, provided much of the show's necessary conflict. Audrey didn't like Georgie and wasn't afraid to say so, forcing him to go out of his way to impress his mother-in-law. In contrast, Jim tried to support him but hated Georgie's more aggressive marketing ideas for his tire store. While the McAllisters were the show's main characters, Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage still made room for cameos from Mary, Meemaw, and Missy. Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 2 will give Mary a major role now that she co-owns Georgie's new tire store, but it was another character's comeback that proved to be the spin-off's most impressive achievement. Lance Barber's George Sr. died in the antepenultimate episode of Young Sheldon, meaning it was seemingly impossible for him to return for the spin-off. Despite this, Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage found a workaround in Episode 12, Typhoid Georgie. When Georgie became severely ill due to overworking himself, he had fever dreams where he was reunited with his father. Barber reprised his Young Sheldon role for these scenes, meaning another return from George Sr. would now make perfect sense after Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 1. The spin-off has already established a way for the character to come back in the future, since Georgie is almost certain to work himself into serious stress again. Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage's George Sr. cameo was more than a callback. George Sr. represented Georgie's fear of failing his family. It was fun to see Barber playing his most famous role again, but unlike Missy's role in Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 1, this appearance amounted to more than a mere cameo. Typhoid Georgie saw Georgie come to terms with the irrational fear that he was failing his family by not working hard enough, and Georgie's fear of failure was represented by Barber's George Sr. to make the link more explicit. George Sr. even turned into a surprisingly creepy zombie ghoul for a moment as he roared at Georgie to get back to work. While this was a strikingly dark moment, it made Typhoid Georgie more than the pointless nostalgia trip the episode might otherwise have been. Georgie's anxiety about taking care of his family, meaning both CeeCee and Mandy and Mary and Meemaw, drives him to overexert himself numerous times throughout both Young Sheldon and Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage. This is his fatal flaw as a character, and he even told his imagined version of George Sr. that it would be alright to take a break on occasion in the moving ending of Typhoid Georgie. Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 2 can focus more on Georgie's work ethic. Typhoid Georgie, and Some New York Nonsense, centered Georgie's intense commitment. Georgie prizes his work ethic, and for good reason. As a child and teen who constantly got himself into trouble, his ability to run himself into the ground for money is one of the few attributes he has been praised for throughout his life. Unlike Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage's Meemaw, who is fearlessly committed to her life of crime, Georgie isn't a hardened criminal. He used to often get involved in schemes to get rich quickly, but he is now motivated more by genuine care for his family than mere money. Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 2 can interrogate the ways that Georgie's work ethic hurts his family and his relationships, which would make Barber's comeback as George Sr. even more fitting than it was in Season 1. Buying the tire store in Season 1's finale, even though this ambitious career move cost him a lot of money and even more stress, is the first rung on the ladder of Georgie's eventual success as the Tire King of Texas. However, it could also be instrumental in the breakdown of his marriage to Mandy. Lance Barber's Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 2 return makes sense for Georgie. Georgie's Big Bang Theory appearance proves he remains a workaholic. Like Typhoid Georgie, Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 2 could bring back George Sr. to justify Georgie's outlook on work. If Georgie remains a workaholic, he will likely do so out of a misguided aim to live up to his father's status as a caregiver for his family. While Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 2 must also find room for lighter, sillier subplots like Connor's love life, the spinoff needs to look closely at the ways that Georgie's relentless work ethic hurts his relationships. This is where George Sr.'s comeback cameo fits in. It is perhaps unsurprising that George Sr. died at work, as Georgie's father was more committed to providing for his family than his own health. Barber's George Sr. is a tragic cautionary tale for his son, but the Georgie of Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage instead views him as a role model to emulate. Thus, Barber's character should return in Season 2 as Georgie continues to imagine a version of his father who approves of his workaholic tendencies. This would allow Young Sheldon's spin-off to explain why the titular union from Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage didn't last. Thanks for watching.